So I think really our job is to figure out how we can multiply Mr. Eckler, right? And just bring Mr. Eckler to all of our districts and then we can retire. That would be nice. One of the things that has struck me just in the short time that we've been here is one of the things that was said this morning. And I think it's important, all of us work just so hard every day to try to make the lives of our teachers and our students better. And we may not always reflect on how far that we come, but the statement this morning that if you don't know what ACEs are, you should go ahead and terminate yourself. That was kind of harsh. I don't really recommend that, but the fact that that's how far we've come really in such a short period of time, I know you all have to be exhausted as I am, in getting this work and this information out, which is really what this session is about, is how we continue to move this work forward. So I just applaud everybody in here for what you're doing every day. And one of the most important things that I think that we can do, and I know we don't do it enough, is to pause and learn from each other. So I definitely want to thank Christy and Kathy and DMHA and IDOE for bringing us together. I hope this continues because I know one thing, if you think about the last couple years and how much the work has changed just in the short time we've been doing this, can you imagine where it's going to be in 5 years? I mean, this is fast work, but this is about close to my 30th year engaged in this, and we're making a difference. And I want you all to really just sort of stop and take that reflection and be really proud of the work that you're doing. And again, just this time to collaborate with each other I think is so important. So I guess I need a clicker, don't I? Did he take it? Oh, okay. We'll just pretend that's the next slide. So anyway, here it comes. That was funny. That's okay. I only have 3 slides, which is great. Like, this will be the best presentation ever, right? 3 slides. So what I was asked to talk about today, and I'm going to spend about 20 minutes doing it, is just what we did in Evansville from an implementation standpoint, because we get the why. A lot of us in this room do. We understand a lot of the work that we're doing. But if it was as easy to understand the work as it was to push into our classrooms and our administrators and our paperwork and all of our data, then we could also retire, right? Like that is the really, really challenging part. And I know Kyle had a session today about go slow to go deep, and I don't think that can be said enough. We're in a rush to get this work done because it's such important work and our kids and our teachers need it. But at the same time, that whole need for what we really refer to as intellectual autonomy and to give everybody the opportunity to understand and integrate the work is hard because we're impatient. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. EVSC, we have 40 schools, around 23,000 students, and we have a pretty large urban area and suburban schools. So just some challenges from an implementation standpoint. We have 22 elementary schools, so just challenging when we roll things out sort of as a group, and we try to do it by grade span. So you can imagine, I have technically 3 people on my leadership team, so we are tasked with a lot, and I know you all have some similar challenges from a leadership capacity standpoint as well. So just very quickly, in around 2014 was when we began in this work. We had an adjustment to our continuous improvement plan. And one of the things that was evident for us is our teachers and our administrators literally could not work any harder than they already were. From a time and an effort standpoint, there wasn't much else that they had left. And we had done improvement in instructional practices and coaching and curriculum and PLCs and RTI and PBIS, and I'm sure there's 10 things that I'm forgetting. And we made growth, right? But one of the things that happened was that growth, didn't equal the effort. Right? So when we would have conversations with our teachers, there was no way that as hard as they had worked, that kids grew 1% or 2%. It should have been 100%. And the second thing was, it couldn't be that there was another new program that was going to fix that, right? So how do you work harder, and why is it that those numbers, despite the effort, A, weren't as high as we thought that they should be, and B, they were flattening? Can you imagine working that hard and the numbers are flattening? And so when we're trying to figure out where we were going to go next with our continuous improvement plan, we just paused and asked the question, why? Why with this effort? Why with all of these great instruction and curriculum and everything else that we had to our teachers, were our students not making the gains that we thought that they should have. And that's really where neuroeducation came into play for us, is we began to look at the root cause of why our students weren't growing at the rate that we thought that they should be based upon our efforts. And we learned a lot, and that is really where our why came from. And obviously, adverse childhood experiences and social emotional learning are a component of that. But where we also landed was, what does healthy child development look like? If you could take a child, right, I'll use Bandura's term, a blank slate, if you will, and you could build that child from the foundation up, what would that look like? What would it look like to start from ground zero and have healthy child development, and then to take those practices and put them into place across your schools? And that's where we developed our GAIN framework. And when we looked at that, when we looked at what was out in the field of neuroeducation and what the research was telling us, we could see huge gaps. We could huge gaps in our practices and our systems and all kinds of things. Now, and we know what that looked like, right? Like, we know that whole body of research, and we know how complicated it is to try to integrate it. And so that's how we ended up developing our framework. And the purpose for the framework was to take all of that information that was out there and to operationalize it so that people could work in a systematic way. And when you had a student that was struggling to learn, then you could go to the root cause and begin from the ground up to think about, where do we start to make corrections? Because one of the things that happens is we get a program, we put the program in place, and just like we had, right? We had this experience, and you all probably have had the same experience as a district, is that you get this growth and then it flattens, right? And then you go, well, that program doesn't work. So then we look for the next program or the next reason. But when you take into consideration child development and neural development, this is what it looks like. And so you always have to go back. Mr. Eckler's classroom is a perfect example of that. The one thing that he focuses on is creating those conditions for learning, right? Healthy relationships. The kids feel safe and connected. He has high expectations. All of the kids feel included. And he does that every day. But how do we have 1,500 teachers. How do we get 1,500 teachers to look like Mr. Eckler, right? I mean, again, I'm all for cloning, but I don't know if that's been developed yet. But that would be amazing, because that is what we're trying to do, right? We would definitely like to operationalize that for everybody so that we understand the importance from a biological standpoint of having those relationships so kids feel safe and connected. The other thing that Mr. Eckler have is high expectations for his kids. So that's another component of it, right? Those are opportunity gaps if we don't ever believe that students can have those kinds of gains or can do those kinds of things, and we don't allow kids to have those experiences. So these are what the conditions for learning look like. Once we create those conditions for learning and we get above the stress line, which we won't talk about today, we develop executive functioning skills, provide high quality curriculum, and then opportunities for skill development, which is the application. So it takes all of that information that's out there and chunks it so that if I'm a teacher, a 5th grade teacher in any elementary school in our district, then I can walk in as the principal and look and see all of these pieces. And if a student isn't learning, I can follow the framework and go straight up, right? Simple. We're done. Yeah, I wish it was that simple. But we started, and you'll notice at the very foundation it says conditions for teaching. And that's probably where we have lived for a long time. The conditions for teaching is developing that why and the understanding that teachers need in order to do the work. How did Mr. Eckler get his base knowledge? How did he come to understand the importance of relationships, high expectations, and those different things he needed to do in order to maximize the learning for each kid? Right? Those kinds of things still have to be directly taught to our pre-service teachers and our new teachers. We have 160 student teachers every year, and we have 150 new teachers every year. And when you ask our new teachers how many of them know what ACEs are, even if they know what PBIS is, we have less than 10% of the kids or students that raise their hand, less than 10%. So it's awesome that this room knows what ACEs are, but I can tell you our teachers coming out of college don't, and a lot of our teachers still haven't had that exposure. So I know we have a ton of work to do, and that's our implementation. And that's why we're here learning from each other. We're learning what other districts are doing to help support the implementation of this across the state, right? That really is the hard work. So we spent almost 2 years on adult-to-adult learning. And I steal that word from Westfield, Washington, so thank you. But almost 2 years, and we're still not where we need to be. We still spend very intentional time having conversations with building leaders and teachers. And one of the things that we have learned, which you all have probably also learned, is they can't learn it all at once. As much as we want to take this big chunk of information and give it to our teachers and our administrators and everybody's an expert, this is years of learning. It really, really is. We have to appreciate the change that we're making is not only having a huge impact on our kids, but this is a 5 to 10 year change process. And that's why I know in 5 years, I can't even imagine where we're going to be. One of the things I think is exciting to me is our kindergartners that came in this year, because we have been able to roll some of this out in our elementary schools. They don't know that school's ever been any different. Isn't that fun to think about? They think you come to school and we have morning connecting circle time and mindful moments and self-reg stations and all this fun stuff. They thought that's how school always was. And that's awesome for them. But imagine them as 5th graders, right? Imagine them where they're going to be in 5 years. We're going to have a very different conversation in 5 years. But we have to be patient, and our implementation has to be about building adult capacities to both understand and do the work. That is one of the most important things. There's tons of programs and things that we can put out there, but if we just give them a curriculum, which is, you'll notice, important, right? High quality curriculum is important. Evidence-based and research curriculum is important. It's just not the only piece, right? You have to have the instructional practices that allow that skill development to occur throughout the day. And we also know that without executive functioning skills, they're not even going to remember what you said. So there's that too, right? But the adult-to-adult learning is at the very bottom. And how we think about and plan that time to develop our staff and our leaders is critical. And how we have that ongoing technical assistance, I don't like to use the word coaching for this, because technical assistance is really just having that conversation to deepen their understanding about the work that they're doing. And giving them the intellectual time to integrate it with what they already do as professionals. That we don't do enough because we're in such a hurry, right? And I can't tell you how many times people have already said, are you measuring what you're doing? How do you know it's working? I'm going to tell you right now, our data would be horrible. It's right. So if you really want to know what impact is, probably ask us in a couple years, because we probably had 25% of our teachers do the curriculum last year. We had 50% maybe this year. Are they all doing a connecting activity? Do they all use their self-reg stations appropriately? Do they all integrate all of the practices throughout the day so that kids have opportunity to develop self-regulation skills? No. But how can we expect them to? They had PD for 1 day this summer, right? And they've had a PLC, and they've had maybe some support in their classroom. So how can we expect teachers to be experts at that with 3 points of contact, right? That's a pretty unreasonable expectation. So this is ongoing conversations, ongoing skill development, ongoing opportunities for our teachers to develop and our administrators to develop the proficiency. I'm fortunate enough to work in a district and have a wonderful superintendent that understands that. And when I show him my data that I do have, he's patient with me and he doesn't fire me. So that's always important. But we also just know that that's also our schools being comfortable and feeling vulnerable enough to us to say things aren't better yet. And I also don't expect things to be better yet. I don't really expect things to be better yet because we're developing self-regulation skills. Teachers have to learn how to do it. They have to develop the competencies to develop that with the kids first. And then the kids have to practice and develop those skills. Right? How long does it take them to develop math skills? How long does it take them to write their name? How long does, it's time and it's practice and it's neural pathways and it's all of those kinds of things. So the work that we're doing is so important, and it is so having a significant impact. But when you're thinking about implementation in your district and what your timelines are, go slow, right? And make sure that we support people where they are, not where we need them to be. If we push people and teachers and administrators past that breaking point with everything else that is on their plate, we will shut down learning. And we just can't do that with this. They'll have the ownership of it if we give them the time and space. And there's a million things I could say about our implementation. I'm fortunate enough, I just have really amazing staff that keep coming back to work every day. Well, most days. But lots of flu, lots of sick kids. But, I think that's part of it too. We have to take care of each other in this work. It's very draining, and I think we're all very passionate about it. But making sure that we have those supports around us as well to keep the work going forward. So I did not look at my time when I started. Where's Christy? Okay, perfect. So I do want to open it up, mostly because I just want to throw this box. Where's Sandy? Where is the box? Oh, you have it, Christy.
Where's
Yeah.
Dr. Washburn at?
She's over here. Yeah, I think that's the first. Like, somebody just has to ask a question just to get this thing thrown at them, really. Yeah. All right, who has a question? Anybody have a question? Anybody brave enough to ask a question?
Are you raising your hand? No.
So while Sandy, oh look, here we go. Oh, there we go.
Whoa, wow, that's pretty cool. Wow.
Oh look, isn't that awesome?
That's really nice. I thought it would be harder, sorry. So, you mentioned the effort schools have to do to train new teachers.
Yes.
What can we do to front load that a bit, like when they're being trained to be teachers? We're trying to think about that in New Jersey because they're really not coming out with the skills,
Sure.
or even some of the skills
Sure.
that they need. How can we begin to have that conversation?
So that's I think that's the critical piece here. I don't know how many of you have universities in your community. We have two, and both of the universities we are working with now. One of our universities, we are providing professional development to their professors, so that the professors can integrate this framework and the neuroeducation into their courses. They wanted us to teach a class, and I did not personally feel like that was the best approach because you're going to have 6 classes that haven't adapted and then one off, right? And what that looks like for this, I want you to think about you're a 22-year-old new teacher, right? School was perfect for you, okay? And you have 6 classes that are teaching this and 1 class that is teaching this. They absolutely have no idea what to do. So what do they end up doing? What they experienced as a student. And so we're working with the professors and going through all of the training that we do with our administrators. And then this summer we'll have our first GAIN certification course, and the professors are coming, and then they'll take that information back. We also have a program, it's a year-long program. They work with our curriculum support person and our senior cell specialist, and the teachers the pre-service teachers get coaching from them, and they go through the professional development, and then they do video modeling with them. So that's been super helpful for them. And then we'll also adjust for the 160 student interns next year. They'll also get a part of this training. So I know that's a big, long answer, but getting in with our universities to help the professors understand what this looks like, because they're still teaching, some of the same classroom management strategies that don't align with it. Some of it does, some of it doesn't. So, very good question. Yes. I don't know where the green box is. There we are.
Is it on? Check.
Yep.
Okay.
I know it's.
So, how do you build the climate to provide the patience and support to acknowledge that this is going to take time?
So what we did is the learning that took place with our administrators first before we ever pushed out to the classroom. We spent about 12 to 18 months with our administrators before so that they had the depth of knowledge and understanding before it went to teachers. So that's the whole time piece. We definitely want things to go faster, but our principals, we just felt like if they didn't understand all of the changes we were going to make, there's no way particularly with 40 schools, part of our capacity is our building leaders and teachers have to own this knowledge. We don't have people that you can push into every classroom or every building. So we have to approach it from that standpoint, if that helps. So, yeah. Other questions? So on the teacher training side, one of and you just tell me when I have time, Christy, when I'm up.
You have like about 3-4 minutes.
Okay. So one of the things we did the adult-to-adult learning, and then we integrated this work with our PBIS because we had done a ton of work in that area. So, and we didn't definitely want to lose those structures or systems. So we spent 2 years. So what we would do is on their team implementation checklist, we colored everything green and said, this is what aligns with GAIN, and this is what you'll do next year. So we kind of front-loaded everything for them so that they had time to see how things would integrate before we changed. And then we did that for 2 years. This year we had to take a pause because they were doing so much work with in their classrooms, and then next year they'll go back to it. So we kind of gave them a holiday. They have enjoyed it, we have not. I'll just be honest on that. But I think Audrey Loppy is probably going to kill me on that part because she doesn't think the pause is very good either. But one of the things then after we did that, when we did the rollout of the actual curriculum and the group plan practices and the community circles, is we rolled out to K-1 first in our 22 schools, and then this past year we rolled out to all grades in our elementary. And we did it 1 year ahead of schedule, which has really been a challenge because we did a survey with the teachers after they had their original round of PD. We were going to wait 1 more year, and they asked for it a year earlier. So that part was good. We trained over 500 teachers this past summer in the curriculum and the rollout. And we do, to start the year, we do a 3, 5, or 8 day blitz where there's no instruction. They take the curriculum and they just go through the social self-regulation domain and the practices that align with the framework. So that was very successful for most of our schools. Particularly, we have over a 30% mobility rate. So for those, a lot of our teachers and students didn't recognize the kids in their class. So they really have to take that time to create those friendships and connections with each other. So. Okay, good. Any more questions? Well, again, I definitely want to thank Kathy and Christy and DMHA and IDWA for putting this on. This really is a wonderful event, an opportunity for us to talk with each other. So I hope they keep doing it. I know it's a lot of work, but we appreciate it. So thanks, you all.
Is this still on? Can I use this for a second? Okay. I'm back here, but let's go ahead and welcome Robert Wilson up. He'll be talking about social emotional learning and our mental health integration. And thank you, Susan.
Thank you. I must confess, I do not have any